have to tell stories on screen?
Um, I don't. Well, I think we always loved the Marx Brothers, and what?
No,
Oh no, Jim. Sorry, David and I always loved the Marx Brothers, but I think when we started, we were really about making people laugh. We weren't film guys. We weren't. There's a lot of stories about directors who saw Lawrence of Arabia or something and said, I want to be a director, but for us it was just we had a sense of humor, and we started with a live theater, and it was really only after we got to LA and tried a little TV and live performing that we thought maybe film would be the best way to do our humor.
We didn't grow up wanting to be filmmakers. We just kind of grew up with this common sense of humor where sometimes films and TV and whatnot take things too seriously that don't need to be taken seriously, and wouldn't it be fun to point that out?
in comedy films, I think we liked Woody Allen, but even more than that, we liked serious movies because we could make fun of them.
Now, Jim, you seemed to cringe a little when they talked about the Marx Brothers. So I'm imagining you must be a Stooges guy.
No, and that's become sort of a joke among us now. But I was never a fan of the Marx Brothers, mostly because the stuff that I saw, they were always big and broad and winking and smiling to the camera and whatnot. And that was never my first choice.
Jim was a snob. He preferred Jacques Tati, and the French comedians.
Yeah.
Well, or at least I preferred to shoot baskets in the backyard.
Yeah.
Anything but the Marx Brothers. Yeah.
And so, for instance, I'll go back to the parody of Enter the Dragon. And so there you have on Hans Island, you have these guys and they're doing their punches and their kicks and they're burning their forearms on the thing. And then you have a group of them taking layups. And then I would transpose that to, Naked Gun, where we're seeing highlights on the scoreboard in the baseball stadium, and you see baseball action, and then you see a guy slide into second base and get attacked by a lion. And so I wondered, that style that you had, how does that work? How do you know how far to push a joke when you've gone just enough and you haven't gone too outrageous where you pull us out of the movie? How does that alchemy work between the three of you?
Well, ultimately, the audience is the ultimate arbitrator. So we do our best writing jokes and filming them and putting them up there, but then we screen the movie. And if the audience doesn't laugh, you can't get us to the cutting room quick enough to get.
I think we had an instinct about it, and so in 0 Hour, we had this great line that was said by the air controller. Looks like I picked the wrong week to quit smoking, and so we did that as the setup, and then we added drinking, amphetamines, and then finally sniffing glue. And if we had gone too far, the audience would not have laughed. But every installment of that worked. So our instinct was right on a lot of it.
And with the lion attacking the second baseman, we're always just looking at how it's actually done. So we're looking at the fun footage that they show during the Dodgers game, of a guy sliding or whatever it is, and then we think, okay, how could we take that one step further and make it ridiculous or funny? And I think David's absolutely right. A lot of it is just an instinct, and sometimes we disagree, but usually, the two people will make enough sense that the third guy will agree, and I think we've been doing it for so long that we just have a feel for where that line is.
Sometimes I lament that we did the Naked Gun way back then and can't update it today, because I'm pretty sure we do something about these guys wearing all this jewelry now. They can barely hold their heads up, and everybody, when he crosses home plate, looks up to God or to the heavens or something. And I know he would have done a joke about it.
And for a while, it was all these bulging muscle, the steroid era. We could have done that. Right?
Yeah.
We were that. The trick for us is finding the right order. In Airplane, the last thing was sniffing glue, and we couldn't go beyond that. There was nothing funnier than that. And then in Naked Gun, I think it was the guy's head being chopped off, trying to catch a ball. And I think that it was the order we couldn't do. That was it. That was the last thing.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned you lump in those jokes and then you test it. Tell us a little bit about, when you describe it in the book, what happened when Michael Eisner watched the film and Katzenberg watched the film, and I think Diller also. And then they had the great idea to show it to other executives at the studio. What did you learn from that test screening?
Not a lot. I mean, we fortunately, Eisner loved it and Katzenberg, and it was over long, but they just thought, okay, this is great. We got to show it to the executives on the lot, and we tried to at the last minute fill the theater, with other people, so it's not just executives, and it which was difficult, and the movie just didn't play at all. Very few laughs, but there was one guy who was hysterical, who loved it, who just kept cackling all by himself, and we had recorded, as we always do, a screening, so we can see exactly where the laugh is and how long. And that first edit was all done to one guy, but it helped. It kind of worked. So the second cut was actually a lot better based on this one guy's instincts.
Well, you mentioned Lloyd Bridges and Sea Hunt. You cast all these guys who never got a laugh in their entire careers until you got hold of them. Go over the casting a little bit and the people that you first approached, these serious actors who took it almost as an affront that you even sent them the script, and how you fixed on Robert Stack and Leslie Nielsen and Peter Graves and Lloyd Bridges. Their lines are so indelible because they were always the most serious guys.
And so, we went around to, we had a list of the most serious guys who appeared not to have any sense of humor, and it included, I think, Charlton Heston and Jack Webb, and there was another guy who'd been on one of those doctor shows in the 50s, Vince Edwards, but the one who took it most as an affront and hated the script was Peter Graves. And he says in the book that he just threw it across the room. He thought it was the worst piece of trash he had ever read and the worst taste ever. But fortunately, our executive producer, Howard Koch, called him and said, "Why don't you come in and meet the boys?" as they called us in those days. And so I think he came in and met. I think he was probably expecting drugged out weirdos, but we were preppy enough that he felt okay. And Howard said Howard would be on the set, and he signed on.
We tell a story in the book about, you're right, Lloyd Bridges was basically known way back then for his show called Sea Hunt, and where he plays a deep sea diver, and it was a very cheap early 50s TV show with no budget, and they used to get letters of complaint because people would recognize the same fish underwater from episode to episode.
Right. When Leslie came in to meet, he was very enthusiastic about the script, loved the script. He told his agent, we heard later, I don't care what they offer me, I pay them to do the script. But when he came to meet, he said, well, I've done comedy. I did a MASH episode. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, well, we'll pretend we didn't hear that. Because, we didn't want to hear about comedies that he was in.
Well, in your minds, what did using those guys give you that would just add to the lunacy? I mean, you mentioned Peter Graves. Not only did you put him in the airplane, you have him asking a small boy if he's seen gladiator movies. I mean, what is the process of talking him, even after Howard Koch says, all right, meet the boys? It's quite a leap for him to go against type from Mission Impossible and basically engage in verbal foreplay with a tow-headed 5-year-old or however old that kid was.
The thing about Peter is he was just in for a penny, in for a pound. Once he made that decision, also his family thought he should do it. They really thought it was funny and wanted him to do it. And he kind of said, okay, these guys don't seem crazy. And I don't think he really asked about one joke over another. He just made the leap of faith. And we're obviously so happy that he was willing to do that.
We were sitting in front of him at the first public screening of the movie, and you could barely hear the movie because he was laughing so hard. And his wife.
And his wife and his daughter were just very, very hard.
All the actors had different reactions, really. Leslie Nielsen later said I would have paid them to do the. He loved it, and obviously he was a closet comedian. He had an enormous talent that had been overlooked all those years. And Stack got exactly what it was. He used to say, I get it. We're the Stooges. You're making fun of our personas. So he just got it and was happy to do it. Peter, I'm not sure really understood it, but just made the leap and said fine. And Lloyd was really the one who really wanted to be funny. He was uncomfortable with the idea of being in a comedy and not acknowledging it. But after a while he got the idea, and I think even pushing it a little bit, it adds a nice texture to the film. And Lloyd was great, and we really lucked out with cast.
Right, and in Lloyd's defense, he was an actor. He came from this school that we knew nothing about, where actors like to have a character and an arc and know where they're coming from, and also as they read their lines. And of course, all we wanted him to do is just say the lines and forget who he
be Lloyd Bridges.
Yeah, just be Lloyd Bridges, the way we remember him.
And so Leslie Nielsen, so when you cast him, the movie this was based on, 0 Hour, that was a very serious, I mean, it may not have been the greatest movie of all time, but it certainly gave you a serious blueprint. But Leslie Nielsen's, I mean, if you ask people today, he's known as a comic actor. We've seen it happen in Hollywood. I remember like Liam Neeson was a serious actor, and now he's like, I don't know, he's in his 60s or 70s, and he's still remains one of the biggest action stars in Hollywood. I mean, how did you know that he would succeed as a comic actor, not only in this, but also it became a complete second career arc for the guy?
We were pretty confident that he would succeed, that he'd be great in Airplane. Like all those guys, if they just played it straight. Actually, what we used to tell them is, don't play it straight. Pretend that you don't even know you're in a comedy and oblivious to the fact that this is a funny film. We knew they had the ability to do this because we had seen them do it before in serious movies. I mean, that, play those those roles just the way we needed to have them play it. But it's just a matter of would they take direction. But I don't think we realized until after the movie how gifted Leslie was. His timing is impeccable, and of course on the set he was a cut up. He famously had this fart machine that he would bring on the set, and there's a lot about that in the book. And he would just always have it with him, and he loved the idea of wearing a suit and tie and being this very serious-looking, straight guy, and farting in front of people and waiting for their reactions.
One of the endearing things, believe it or not, about Airplane, and of course, all we ever wanted to do, we were shooting for, you don't have to take things so seriously. But when each of those guys signed up to do the movie, they were all poking fun at their own careers and their own images. And so one of sort of an endearing aspect of Airplane is they were willing to have laughs at their own expense. And I think that's kind of a wonderful tone.
As you guys were cutting your teeth as writer-directors, and the first one would have been Kentucky Fried Movie, which is absolutely hilarious and just so granular in its parody of Enter the Dragon, a movie I've seen a million times. But as you were making your way, what comedy came along and you guys watched it and you thought, you know what? That is the high bar. Are we ever going to be able to play in that sandbox?
Well, I mean, there were no comedies, like we did that we looked up to and thought we can't do that. I mean, there were wonderful movies by Woody Allen. He did Annie Hall, and but that's an orange. We're an apple, so you can't compare it. But and maybe we thought we'd love to do a movie, like that someday. But really, I think that was outside of our expertise, and we just wanted to be the best roofing trio.
We always felt like we had a unique take on our sense of humor. Had a specific thing, and particularly when we started writing Airplane, the idea of doing it with those straight actors, that was the whole vision, really, or 80% of the vision of the film. And so we never saw a movie that, a comedy that we thought would have enough, be better or not allow us to go forward and do that.
So back to the fart machine. So here you have Julie Haggerty, and talk about what Leslie used to do to her with his little fart machine, which I was trying to imagine exactly what it was that he did, but it wasn't like a whole contraption, was it? But what did he used to do to her?
I mean, we really heard about this when we read the book, because Julie did this interview. And we didn't know about that. We didn't know about her cross-country trip with Steve Zucker. What we did know about was that Bob Hayes was having a lot of trouble keeping a straight face because he would be doing one of his straight lines and Leslie would be the fart machine. So, go ahead.
In fact, Leslie, what he was doing to Julie, he was doing to everybody. It wasn't just, he didn't, nobody was left out.
Yeah.
One time we were doing an interview on live TV with Leslie, and he had his fart machine with him. And right during the middle of the answer on live TV, and of course the interviewer had no clue what he did, but he would let off a fart during the interview and kind of look around uncomfortably. The interviewer had no clue how to handle it.
Wow. Or as I read, he would say to Julie, "Oh, Julie," which must have been mortifying for her.
Yeah.
So now you took a chance on these very serious actors, and you mentioned, for instance, Vincent Price.
We went to Vincent Price for The Doctor. This was one of the 4 people who passed on the movie before Leslie came around. And he just passed for whatever reason, but then in his obituary it said his biggest career regret was not taking the airplane.
And interestingly, we went to Charlton Heston for virtually every parody we worked on.
Yeah.
And in his obituary, he said, "I'm so glad I didn't make those movies."
Yeah. So
Really?
That had to happen.
No, I'm lying.
He's just,
That's not true.
Thank God I didn't make that film.
you know, it is interesting that guys like Jack Webb and Charlton Heston would appear on the Tonight Show doing comedy sketches with Johnny Carson and like reading poetry and stuff, and you know, so it's not that they didn't like comedy. I think they just didn't trust us, and they made the mistake of reading the script.
And we did actually go to Charlton Heston. He just didn't celebrate the fact that he'd said no.
Now, whether it was a success of yours or approval from someone who mattered to you, what first gave you the confidence that this style would work and that you did belong as filmmakers in Hollywood?
Well, we were used to our live show. We had audiences every week for 5 years, and back in Madison, and then in LA, and we
Kentucky
really,
Fried Theater.
in Kentucky Fried Theater,
And Kentucky Fried Movie.
yeah, and so that gave us confidence. Although we didn't have the confidence to direct yet, we had never been on a movie set, but we watched John Landis, and we saw what he did, and we learned from John Landis, and so then we knew that we could direct it, especially with a cabin full of people, you know, rows of seats facing forward, and then the cockpit. There's not much blocking and moving the camera around.
When we first got together, it was kind of on a lark because David and Jerry had access to some video equipment. And so we got together and just started filming spoofs of commercials and popular TV movies from that era, from the late 60s and early 70s, and just to have fun. But eventually we started to show them to friends and family, and they laughed. And so we thought, oh, this is cool. Maybe we can open a theater in Madison, Wisconsin, and show it to them. So we really had years and years of filming and showing the stuff in front of an audience before we got to our own set. And I think that's what led to a lot of our confidence.
I knew Robert Evans very well, and he had said to me, because The Kid That Stays in the Picture had been rejected by Simon & Schuster, the Paramount book label, and he called me up out of the blue and he said, you know, Kid, I want you to have a quote on the back of the book jacket, and I'm in there with like Faye Dunaway and Jack Nicholson and David Brown, all these great people, and I'm like, I don't belong in this thing. And he told me this story about, because I had gotten hold of the galleys for his book, and I had written a lot of the anecdotes, and as I'm pulling anecdotes out of you guys, and my conclusion was, this was back in Variety, I did a whole column, and I said, well, look, the only reason they rejected this book is they didn't want him telling the Paramount story, because this is just fabulous. And then Evans told me later that Mike Eisner read it and called him up, and he said, look, I want you to give me a galley for me and one for my wife. We're going away this weekend. And by that Monday, Evans had a deal with Hyperion. And Eisner's a very interesting guy. You would not have thought of him as somebody like that. But talk about how important he was in making your brand of humor and Airplane acceptable to a studio where you had guys like Don Simpson saying, this is a piece of shit. No offense.
Wait. He only said that, Simpson, between doing lines.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say Simpson only said that after he saw the movie. So
yeah.
No, long before.
He saw it before. Yeah. He saw it after he read the script and after he saw the film.
Yeah.
While
doing lines.
Yeah. Eisner was great. I mean, we owe our careers to Michael. You know, he heard the concept, and from someone who had read it, a reader at UA, Susan Beerwald, and he said, got on the phone to Katzenberg and said, track it down. And he read it, and he just, I don't know, it's just a comedy in an airplane or the jokes in the movie. I don't think anybody understood the casting, but he did us a number of favors, one of which was we were originally wanted to shoot the movie in black and white on a prop plane, because that was 0 Hour. That's how we saw it. And he said, no, if you're going to do it at the studio, it's got to be a jet plane in present day in color. And we said, all right, and that was the best thing he ever could have done for us. But also just he ran the studio and he believed in it and believed in us directing it, and that was enormous, because every other studio had turned it down.
One of the coolest things that has happened in the last couple weeks since the book has been published is that David, out of gratitude, went to Eisner's office and gave Eisner a copy of the book in person. And they sat and they chatted for a while. And David, why don't you talk about that?
Well, I think out of all the people in our whole career, I mean, I don't think we would have done this, had the life that we had without Michael Eisner, and because every other studio turned it down, and it hung by a thread. And Michael Eisner, for some reason, thought, well, this is a good idea, and and after 43 years, I never felt that we really expressed enough gratitude at the time, and that's why I wanted to go. I had dreamed about this for 2 years, actually going to his office and giving him a sign. We signed the book for him, and he asked me, so are you going around personally delivering the book to everyone? I said, no, you're the only one, and it's true. He's the only one that I crossed the 405 for him. So this was, so he should be happy about this.
You put it way out there. It's incredibly execution dependent. When you look back on this movie, from the casting to the jokes, they were grounded in familiarity. Anyone who had been through LAX at that time knew exactly what you were writing about. And even to the PA couple that's obviously having the marital problems, where did you get that confidence, would you say? And what was the biggest impediment for you to being that confident to do what you guys did?
One of the reasons we had that kind of confidence is because we had each other. I'm not sure any one of us would have been that headstrong to do it, but we had the group. The other thing is, we never worried about whether we were good directors. We never had really aspirations to be great directors, but we were very confident that we knew how to pull off the comedy, that we knew how these people should say their lines, how the set should look, shooting this movie was not that difficult. We had a lot of help. We were very willing to ask stupid questions to the cinematographer, the camera operator, or anybody else who would explain things to us. So I just don't think that was ever a problem, guys.
Somebody once asked us, what is the definition? What is a director? And I think Jerry said the director is the guy who knows what he wants. And then we did have a vision of what the end product would be, and then we just figured out how to get there. And then landing at Paramount was a big deal. I mean, writing the movie wasn't that tough for us, but landing at Paramount, and Paramount took us through a rewrite that made the movie better.
The other thing I think, and I hope this comes across in the book, is how lucky we felt we were. And if over the 10 years we were together leading up to Airplane, certainly there were a bunch of setbacks and stuff, but the seas, as we always say, the seas kind of divided for us. And that's how we always felt, including, but not limited to, coming across 0 Hour. Coming across 0 Hour, which was this gift from the heavens that landed in our laps at the perfect time, when we could take all the stuff we had learned doing the theater and performing live and start to write a spoof of a particular movie and a particular genre.
I was surprised to see in the book Francis Ford Coppola's name come up. Can you explain exactly what happened there?
Yeah, we had, Paramount wanted a sequel, and we kind of felt like we had run out of jokes in the first one toward the end, in the third act. And we just couldn't imagine going back into the office and coming up with another 90 minutes of airplane jokes. So we suggested to them that we should do Airplane to The Godfather, and it's Bob and Julie coming home. They're a couple, and and he's just had landed this plane and been kind of a hero for it, and his family is mafia. I mean, it's all there. We have Stack and Bridges and all those guys be part of the family, and then we could do a parody on a mafia movie, and we're just with the same characters, and we love the idea of the airplane being held up by the puppet strings,
And Eisner and Katzenberg loved the idea.
Yeah. Katzenberg loved it. I think Eisner did too, but Francis said no.
Because he wanted to do Godfather 3. And so it's a double shame that we didn't get to do it, because we didn't get to do it and he made Godfather 3.
Everybody would have been better off had we done that sequel, the airplane. Yeah.
Well, we mentioned 0 Hour, and we mentioned Enter the Dragon. For me and all my friends when I was young, we watched Enter the Dragon all the time, and every single joke we got, we were completely vested in. Mr. Han, where he's in the bedroom and he comes out of the shower and he plugs in his hairdryer into his hand. I mean, every single thing. How did you know in those two specific instances that anybody would care? What made those things right for your comedy genius?
Well, thank you, but it's because we cared, and just we loved those airplane disaster movies. We loved the airport movies.
We loved Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, loved it, and we loved Shaft, and that's how we got the Black Jive stuff. We don't dislike those. On the contrary, we love movies. We love those movies, and so, but we still thought they need to be spoofed.
You found a great way to continue this, both with the Naked Gun movies, where you were even able to take the movie Ghost, which is the ultimate, because you're pulling from your own movie and using it as fodder for parody. Did you have misgivings about doing that?
When I saw Ghost, I loved it, but I immediately called Jerry and I said, "Look, we can spoof this. Well, Leslie and Priscilla doing the play, the Potter's." And Jerry thought it was great, and so yeah.
You were able to do that also with the scary movie films that you did as well. And I wonder, though, even down to in Airplane, where you have a woman and she says, "Yeah, I just would like to have a little light reading," and she's handed a leaflet of the greatest Jewish sports stars, or the Jive thing. Could you make a movie like you did in this current time when everyone, it almost seems as though they wake up wondering who they're going to be angry at today? Could you do that?
Well, it's a lot more sensitive today, but I don't think, if audiences, we've shown Airplane to audiences in the last few years, and they laugh just as hard, at the jokes. The jokes still work, but I think it would be hard to get a movie like that made, to get it through the studio, the executive rules.
One of the nice things about Eisner and Katzenberg is that they came from filmmaking. The Paramount staff came from filmmaking, so they appreciated the creative process. It's kind of one of the stories, and I don't think we put this in the book, was in 1980 when the movie was released around the world. We traveled with the movie to do publicity and stuff, and we wound up going to Germany, where the movie was dubbed in German, and it was clear sitting in the audience that a lot of the puns didn't work. But then when the black guys came up, we thought, oh, for sure, this is going to fall on, nobody's going to like this. But when they came up, the audience laughed as hard as the American audiences laughed. And so we asked somebody afterward, how come everybody laughed at that? And they said, well, we had dubbed the black guys in Bavarian, which is a German kind of dialect. And so the fact that they were black was irrelevant. It was the fact that we had dubbed them in Bavarian, or whoever did the dubbing had been smart enough to dub them in Bavarian.
You left the leaflet about greatest Jewish sports stars intact, which was hilarious. But you did take out the one with Jose Feliciano and Stevie Wonder, and talk about that a little bit and why you decided, no, we don't want to risk offending people of Polish descent.
Well, it's not so much offending. Someone called us and pointed out that, in fact, because of Polish jokes, Polish children feel worse about themselves. And, I think for me, it's just like, do no harm. In other words, if you have something vulgar, disgusting, graphic, whatever, and people can find it in poor taste or not, but if you start doing things that really has a negative effect on people's lives, creates bad stereotypes, then I think you're doing harm, and we realized that, and we just took it out.
And also, Polish jokes were a thing of the past, the 70s. I mean, people found those funny. They do them on Johnny Carson's show, but that's part of I'm very happy that we took it out, because the airplane has, most of the stuff in Airplane is timeless. And I think that was an embarrassment today.
And I think one of my favorite jokes in the movie is famous Jewish sports legends, because, face it, we're three Jewish kids or guys who were mediocre athletes on our good days. And once we made that joke, it kind of allowed us to take off our gloves with any number of people, because we'd already made that joke at our expense.
Jim, I think you meant used to be mediocre athletes on our best day.
Right, on a good day.
I mean, used to be, not are. Anyway,
No,
sorry.
right.
We don't need
Yeah, and I guess I should, for the purpose of the people who are going to be watching this, what you had was the Polish airline, the pilots were Jose Feliciano and two actors that looked like Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles.
Yeah, we had to cut Jose Feliciano out, but fortunately he didn't see it.
Nah,
Ooh.
Yeah.
still got it, Jerry.
He was
What? No, I don't know about that. Okay.
What I loved about the Scary Movies, it allowed you to parody other films, and it didn't just have to be one. It could be the genre movie at a time when it was hot. Has there been a movie recently where you guys talked to each other and you said, you know what, we could do this. We can take this and we can run wild with it. What came the closest to getting you guys back in the room?
You know what? We saw Top Gun, and we loved Top Gun, and I love Tom Cruise movies, but Top Gun could have been parodied, and Jim and Pat Roth did the Hot Shots movie, so we thought we could, do something like that, but we didn't. I think we didn't feel a lot of love from the studios, who are anti.
It would have also required work.
When I look at the other works that each of you did, even separately, I'm thinking of Basketball. I almost feel like, was that movie worth it just to hear Bob Costas say, "You're excited, look at these nipples"? I mean, have you always felt like you're getting away with something here? I felt the same way about Beaver Cleaver's mom.
Well, we did. We felt we were getting away with something, and not realizing that when Bob Costas saw the movie, he was horrified. And it was like he's so embarrassed, and he said to me, "Did you have to put that in the trailer?" And I said, "Of course, it's the funniest gag in the movie. That's what we put in trailers." So, anyways, but it wasn't until about 10 or 15 years later that Jim, I think you were on one of his shows, on some show where Costas interviewed Kareem, and he said, "Is David still mad at me?" Because I guess he showed it to his kids, and they loved it. Of course, Jim remembered it. Yeah, he did. Costas came around after a while when he realized he was a hero to his kids. You know, by the time they got to be 15 or 16.
Because I was always intrigued to see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar as the pilot on the plane. And, you know, they recently there was a series based on the Go-Go Lakers and Jerry Buss and all that stuff. And Kareem did not like that. You know, and the only thing I'd seen him with as an actor was with his friend Bruce Lee in Game of Death. How in the world did you know that he had the kind of sense of humor where he could poke fun at himself that way, to the point where he actually, you know, he eats the fish and gets dragged out of the cockpit and he's wearing his Lakers uniform? I mean, what was that dance like to get him to commit?
That was another instance of us just getting lucky. The original part was written for Pete Rose as the athlete pilot, but we filmed during the summer of '79, and Pete Rose was playing baseball that summer. So it's sort of as a second choice, we went after Kareem and wrote the stuff for Kareem, and he really appreciated it, and he read the script and completely got it and loved the idea of having a laugh at his own expense. And the only correction he made, he read the whole script, as opposed to, I think a lot of people only read their parts, but he read the whole script. And the only correction he requested we make is that in the flashback to the African tribe, we had written that the African natives had bones in their noses, which of course would have been awful. But he was the one who requested we take that out.
And I should say then, you know, we were in that scene where the actor playing Kareem is acting his part in Airplane, but the three of us had neglected to read the script, and we were kind of horrified when they had Kareem saying "fuck off" to the kid, and we were like looking at each other saying, yeah, we don't remember him ever being like that. And I called up Rossi Harris, the actor who played Little Joey, and I said, "Was Kareem mean?" He said, "No, he was a complete gentleman the whole time." So that was complete fiction. And so we wrote a letter to the editor, to the LA Times, and Kareem appreciated it because he was nothing but a gentleman on the set.
In the book on which that series was based, that reaction actually came not on the set of the movie. They transposed that onto the set of the movie, but it was something that happened kind of early in his career when he'd had enough of being incessantly hounded for his autograph. But that's interesting that he raised the question with the African tribe, and not the brickbat that he just refused to get back on defense.
Yeah, Kareem may have said that. I don't know, to someone along the line where he said, but not the kid. I mean, that's a big deal.
I don't think that's fair. When, you know, Quentin Tarantino has Hitler being killed in a theater, that's fine. You know, okay, everybody knows that's, you know, pretty much of an exaggeration. But you know, it's unfair to show Kareem acting that way to a kid, especially when Kareem has this foundation where he sends disadvantaged kids to camp, and if he's portrayed as being that much of an asshole, I mean, I don't know how they can do that.
I'm on subscribed to his blog, and he comes out with stuff a couple times a week, and he's a brilliant writer, and also he's deeply into jazz. I mean, he's just this Renaissance man who happens to be 7'2", and for years and years was a leading scorer in the history of the NBA.
I was so intrigued by your interaction with Charles Bluedorn, who was, you know, my mentor, Peter Bart, who ran Variety. You know, Bluedorn was his boss, and they made The Godfather there and all these other incredible movies. But can you tell that story and why it prompted you guys to resign from your deal at Paramount?
We didn't resign.
Oh.
We signed the deal.
Oh, you did?
Well, no, Charlie Bluedorn was great. He was actually a wonderful guy and a bit of a character. But we went out to, right after Airplane came out, we were in Deauville, and with Eisner and Diller, we went to some restaurant to meet Charlie. Charlie wanted to meet us, and so he thought, gee, great, because he wasn't around the studio. And so we had this lovely lunch with his wife, and at some point he starts telling this story about how David, he was going to do this movie, and David, he was going to invest in a movie that David Begelman was doing, and he drives by the set, and someone says, no, you're not part of this movie anymore. So he was ticked. And then he was just telling this nice story, and then all of a sudden his face, he started to turn red and just say, and I told that, I don't know what I can say on this podcast, but this guy with a flat, I mean, he just was expletives one after another, everyone, and then the end of it, because if you're without loyalty, Hollywood is as barren as the Libyan desert. And he was really,
it was in the context of trying to get us to sign a new deal, to update our deal with Paramount. And so the whole desert thing, I think, was to try to intimidate us into signing, your lives will become as barren as the Libyan desert if you don't sign another deal with Paramount.
And so we signed.
And what was the impact of that on you guys?
We stuck with Paramount.
Yeah, eventually, maybe it wasn't that night, like Jim said, but it was, we did sign.
And your careers have not been as barren as a desert. Well, listen, it's great to spend time with you guys. The book was just a riot to go back and remember the gags and see how you did them. And there's some great memories there. So I really appreciate you guys being so generous with this.
Well, thank you.